Hi everyone, welcome back to the GallowgateShots YouTube and podcast channel. We are back with another match preview after what seemed to be an age with that international break. We're finally returning to club football. This one's going to be for the Brentford game at home over the weekend. I'm Scott, I am your host for this one, and I am joined this week by, we're going to call them match preview regulars now because we've been on every single one, Daryl and Andy. Andy, mate, how are we this week?
I'm great, mate. Glad to be a regular, finally. Cheers. Looking forward to getting back into it. Obviously, battered and bruised after that really tough start. Bored to death off the international break. But yeah, looking forward to having a positive run in the season now after a rough start.
Yes, Daryl, are we expecting a bounce back for this game?
I think so, and I think the advantage of us being back at St James's this weekend is going to be a huge positive for the lads. It's about time that we put a few wrongs to rights and really showed up and put in a performance worthy of what we are capable of.
Absolutely. Well, before we get into all of that goodness, here's a little word from our sponsor. The GallowgateShots match preview is brought to you by Magpin. Magpin are the go-to site for high-quality, unofficial enamel pin badges of Newcastle United players, legends and retro kits. For more information, visit their website at magpinbadges.bigcartel.com. Okay then, so Saturday 16th of September, 5:30pm kickoff under the lights, as they like to say, at St James's Park. I believe it's live on Sky. For you in the UK who aren't going to the match, we play Brentford. Not doing too badly. One win and 3 draws in their last 4. I believe the draws were against Spurs, Bournemouth, and Palace. And then they beat Fulham 3-0 as well through there. So they're sitting in 8th, Daryl. But last time we played Brentford, it's a little bit of a different story to what maybe we could be expecting today.
Yeah, absolutely. In the game last season at St James's came at the very start of what was probably our most productive run of the season. It came on the anniversary of the takeover as well, the first anniversary of the takeover happening. And I have to give a bit of context when I say and mention the run that we were on at that point. And in the previous week, having just come back from an international break ourselves at that point as well last season, we went away to Fulham and beat them 4-1. If you all remember that absolutely astounding Miguel Almiron volley from the corner of the box that just absolutely looped into the far corner. It was absolutely glorious. So yeah, we had beaten Fulham 4-1 the week before and succeeded in coming up to St James's Park the following week with another club from West London, from just up the road there in Chiswick. And we absolutely battered them 5-1. With 3-1 up at the point when Brentford got their consolation goal. You had 2 goals from Bruno, a goal from Miggy, a goal from Isak, I think, and a goal which was an own goal from one of their defenders whose name escapes me at this time. But yeah, I mean, at that point we were absolutely on fire. I think it was probably one of our best performances of the first half of the season. I think we can all agree that the best performance of last season was the one against Tottenham at home, when we obviously turned them over inside 21 minutes. But in terms of the early parts of the season, that was probably our best performance. We dominated them from start to finish. Really showed just how good a team we were that day, and I think we'll probably be looking to try and mirror that this season. I don't know if it will be as thorough as a 5-1 win. I don't know if it'll be that emphatic, but I think the lads and lasses who will be there in the crowd will have had a full day sampling the delights of Newcastle, and certainly be able to whip up a decent atmosphere come Saturday tea time, and I look forward to it a lot.
Yeah, it was a strange one last season, Andy, because Brentford had a pretty decent start of the season, if I recall, and we were expecting a tough game. I think even in the preview last time we were a bit hesitant with our predictions even. But it turned out not to be that, like Daryl said, quite a high scoring match.
Yeah, it was. I think Brentford's one of those teams that we seem to have their number for some reason. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we were the only team they didn't beat in the league last year. I think that's right. So they're one of these teams who they just go about the business really calmly and seem to just be really, really consistent. And obviously, when you are consistent, you win most games. And yeah, that was one of those results where we all looked at each other in the stadium. We were going, we're actually really good, because obviously it was getting to that point where it was kind of, are we actually good, or are we just sort of fluking this entire season? And then we kept turning all these teams over. So going into this season, it's obviously a lot more of a different atmosphere, where now we're on the other side of it going, were we actually good, or was it a bit of a fluke? And I don't believe it was by any means, but obviously we're at a position in the season now where we've really got to show our mettle and show that we deserve to be where we were last season, that we deserve to be Brentford twice. Yeah, they're a good team, but we're better.
Yes, well, fingers crossed. Like you said, we do bounce back from our, I don't want to say poor start, but not as good as expected start. I think, maybe a couple more points on the board would have been nice. But we have played Man City, Liverpool, and Brighton, as well as Villa, of course, to start the season. I'll stick with you, Andy. Obviously, it's going to be a slightly different Brentford side this season. We'll talk about Ivan Toney later, but we'll focus on the new players that Brentford have brought in over the summer. Do you want to enlighten us with their new signings?
I will. I think it was one of those where, I'll be honest, I had to look it up, because Brentford, one of these teams, obviously there was millions of signings going on, and I think Brentford just kind of plodded along and did really sensible business that no one really cared about. But when you go through what they have done, it was actually really sensible. So they signed Nathan Collins from Wolves, who is still a kid, really, 22 years old as a centre-back. It's brilliant, really. 26 million quid, great signing. He's that player that... He's our Sven Botman, really, for them. He's going to be that linchpin in their defence hopefully for them the next 5-6 seasons, something like that. Great player, already doing really well. They signed that Schade from Freiburg permanently. They had him on loan last season. I think it was when we played them away from home, I was looking at him going, who is this guy? Where's he come from? Because I remember him just being absolutely rapid, and I presumed it was one of their youth players or something like that. But he looks a really good sort of inverted left winger. They brought in a new keeper, Flecken, because they lost David Raya, which was a weird transfer saga in itself, why he left. And then randomly, I had no idea this happened, Neil Maupay went back to Brentford, which just reeks of desperation. Of all the strikers you could possibly get, the one who's been probably consistently the worst first team striker in the Premier League. That's probably not too harsh, I don't think. I'm not happy for him to prove me wrong, but he has been abysmal for forever. They've got him purely because they effectively have no proper strikers in the squad. So sensible business, a few young players, a few old composed heads. So sensible transfers from Brentford as always.
Yeah, you've said that now, Andy, and obviously he's now going to score a hat-trick against us.
If
that happens,
if he starts.
I'm no longer a regular. I'm off.
Daryl, obviously we've mentioned the new players in, but they do still have some players to watch, and I think we've seen they're coping okay without Ivan Toney. We thought that would maybe be a linchpin in their wheel, and it's actually they seem to be doing better without him. Which is a strange thing to say.
Yeah, I think it probably comes down to, like we've mentioned there with Andy, it's all about their system and their model and their style of play, isn't it? They've got players, and I think you can class a lot of their strength as coming from their wide forwards, and we include Wissa and Burmo in that as well. And Burmo, I don't know if you remember watching over the last couple of weeks, he's had a penalty or two, and he has the exact same technique as Ivan Toney in terms of how he delivers his penalties and takes his shots, which was interesting to see, to be fair.
The technique that should be illegal.
The hop, was it some sort of hop,
Yeah.
skipping and jumping and just smash it the other way? Unless you're Nick Pope, in which case you can save it. As he did the first one last season. So, for me, and I know we're not the FPL show, but Burmo for me is an FPL steal, because he's always picking up points left, right, and centre. So he's definitely performing in games. Wissa's banged in a couple of goals already as well this season. So they do still have a threat. And I think he's played Schade through the middle a couple of times this season already. And I think the addition of Maupay is simply just so he's got more of a focal point in the middle of the park. And that's not to say that he's going to do what you just said, Scott, and score a hat-trick or whatever against him on Saturday, because his shooting boots have been off since he signed for Brighton, I think. But yeah, I mean, they do still pose a threat. And as much as I personally, off the top of my head right now, can't remember the midfield, they're still a very dynamic team and as you've mentioned, they can be consistently good, and they know how to grind out results. They haven't. Is it 4 games in? They haven't lost a game yet. Then, if that's the case, because it's the 3 draws and 1 win, so they will make it difficult for us. We shouldn't be under any illusion that it's not going to be an easy game, because it's going to be difficult. It's one of these things, especially in the form that we're currently in as well. Our form is very patchy at the moment. We're coming off the back of 3 straight losses. But I think as we'll get onto it later in this podcast, when we talk about the selection available to us, I think we should be able to resolve that this weekend.
Yeah, well, before we get on to what we can do, we'll just quickly touch on Brentford's unavailable players. And I say unavailable because there's a couple of injuries, and obviously there's the big elephant in the room, Ivan Toney, who is not available until I think it's 16th of January he comes back. So they're going to miss him for the good half of the season. We'll touch on Toney first, and he obviously ex-Newcastle player. He's always seems to love a goal against us, or at least try to. Penalty aside last season. We've talked about how much they're not missing him at the moment, but do you think maybe through the long term of this season, the longer they go without a goal scorer like Ivan Toney, the more it might damage them? Just given their run up, obviously they've played Spurs, Bournemouth, Palace, and Fulham. You'd say they've arguably only really had 1 or 2 difficult opponents, and then maybe a 1 below and maybe 1 on par. And I'll let you at home decide which of those 4 teams fit into which slot there. But yeah, do you think the Toney absence is going to be their oncoming or their undoing over the coming weeks and months?
Yeah, obviously it's hard to say because he was such a linchpin, but so far not necessarily an issue. Although you could argue those 3 draws one of 2 of those could have become wins with Toney there. But yeah, he was so crucial the way they played. They played really direct. They were really good from set pieces. I think only 1 team in the league scored more from set pieces than them last year. He's one of those old-fashioned strikers that can actually hold the ball up, but he's that sort of cliche of good feet for a big man. He can do it all. He can run with the ball. He can finish. He can head. He can hold it up. But it could also be a bit of a blessing in disguise as well, because if you are reliant on one player, when that player is gone, then you need to find other ways, and you need to be a bit more flexible in how you score goals. We've already seen Mbeumo scored. I think Wissa's got 1 as well. And I think we've seen something similar with Tottenham. They've obviously lost Kane. Son started scoring again. Maddison scoring goals. So, when you've got good managers, they'll find a way to do it. But yeah, like you say, as the season goes on, if they get an injury or Mbeumo stops firing, or for whatever reason teams just work out how Brentford are doing it, they need that star man, and it's that star man that, let's be honest, he did kick them into those higher positions last year, whereas they might have just had a good mid-table year season without him last year. But just wanted to touch on the Toney thing as well, just briefly, about the whole gambling thing. I know this is probably a canny chatter topic in itself, but I think it's an absolute disgrace that Toney has been in this position, surrounded by gambling the way he is in football. I think it's an absolute disgrace, to be honest, that he's going to go back out there in January wearing a Hollywood Bets t-shirt, playing in the Sky Bet, and Sky Bet Championship before him, and all these things. I just think it's one of these things that we really need to get a grip on in the game, because I think it's a shambles. Not that it excuses any of his behaviour, because obviously he's made some mistakes, but I think that's a conversation that we need to have on probably another podcast in the state of gambling in the game, really.
Absolutely. I agree. I think it's something that's embedded quite deeply in the UK culture, and it's not helped by the glamification of it that the football seems to do every weekend. But we will move on, and you said that as a topic for a different podcast. A couple of other players, Daryl, that Brentford have these are the injuries. They've got De Silva out, and I think he's out for a bit long term, and then Ben Mee, who I think is 50-50 whether he comes back or not. I don't know if he's a regular starter for Brentford at the moment as Ben Mee, but he's a name that keeps popping up with us. He seems to always kind of do well when he comes on against against us in recent times.
Yeah, I like Ben Mee as a defender, and he's somebody actually who Eddie Howe is quite familiar with as well. I remember listening to him very recently on another podcast with a certain very tall footballer, former striker, and he was saying how much that he learned from Eddie Howe during his time at Burnley. And to be honest, Ben Mee's one of these kinds of players who he's almost a bit like an old school defender. He's no nonsense. He's very much win a tackle, clear the ball, head the ball, whatever. That kind of old school like ethos to him, and he's just a very. I don't want to say basic in the fact that he's crap, because he's not. He's fantastic in what he does, but he's very good at the basics. He knows what he needs to do. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, and when you say there about him being a regular, I think he has been quite a regular starter for Brentford, specifically last season. He got quite a few appearances in last season. But because of the way they recruit in their system, they haven't really missed him that much when he's been out so far this season.
We will move on to Newcastle. Obviously, this is a Newcastle podcast. We'll look at our unavailable players or our injuries. Obviously, we do this before the Eddie Howe press conference on a Friday, and it's been a couple of weeks since we've had one, so we're going off rumours and off reports from other journalists as well with a couple of these. But obviously, Emil Kraft is now back in full training. I do think it's probably a bit soon for him to probably even feature on the bench, if I'm being honest with you. And the fact we've got Trippier and Livramento. I was trying to think of his name there. I don't know why. Couldn't think of it. Trippier and Livramento to cover that right back position. I don't think he's going to be rushed back. It'll be nice and slow with him. Obviously, Joe Willock is still out as well. Javier Manquillo's on that list that I saw, and I haven't seen any reports from being injured, but looks like he's out. And then the big one, really, Andy, and it's like I say, it's the one that we've had no confirmation from the club, but we've had it from a couple of local journalists, is that Tonali is going to miss. Well, he's missed the Italy game. I think it was last night or tonight, at time recording, and he's likely to miss the Brentford game and possibly also his homecoming to AC Milan, which is a bit of a shame. But given the fact that it is Tonali, the new player, obviously the big money signing of our summer, is that a big miss for us?
Yeah, I'm gutted. I think he has been our player of the season so far. Obviously, first game, I think in pre-season there was some question marks because he obviously got bodied a couple of times and he maybe didn't look quite 100%. But that first game against Villa, obviously scored straight away, completely bossed it. And even in the games where we haven't performed as well, he's just looked class. He's just that touch of quality. He's that player we've been crying out for. I think people maybe expected him to be a Pirlo when really he's more of a Gattuso. He's someone that runs about, gets himself forward, tries to create things. Although we haven't seen the Raji side that Gattuso had yet, but I'm sure that's to come. But yeah, he's a massive miss. And I don't want to dwell on that side of it too much because again, it then gives an opportunity for other people. We obviously didn't have Tonali last year, and we were mint.
Yep.
So it's an opportunity for someone like Longstaff to get back in there and really stamp his name in the team. It may be a change of shape from how he might decide that he wants to push Bruno into that Tonali more advanced role, and we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, hopefully it is just a one-off. I'd be gutted for him if he missed that Milan game. Gutted for him, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah, the other player that's on that list, which, well, he wasn't on the list, but he obviously was missing in the last game, Daryl, that's Sven Botman. We could see the gap he left in our defence when he was out not last week, but in the last game. There's no reports whether or not he's going to be back or not. Again, like I said, we're doing this before the press conference, but, you're kind of hoping he's going to be back and ready for this after having, 3 weeks now to recover. We kind of need him in that defence, don't we?
Yeah, Andy's absolutely right. They're having his hands together in prayer. I mean, I think if you looked at some of Sven's socials over the international break, there you could see he was working hard on his recovery. But you're absolutely right. He leaves a massive hole in that defence when he's not there. And that's not a slight on Dan Burn at all. But the lad he's a young lad and he just oozes class. He is the Rolls Royce of our defence, really, in terms of his quality and his ability. And we do not look the same as a defensive unit when he's not there, which is, you don't want to rely on these players as heavily as that, but unfortunately in the situation that we're in, we do. And it can't be helped. And just to also go back on the Tonali thing, I actually don't think that's as bad a problem as it's made out to be. I'm not quite... don't get me wrong, I fully agree with everything that Andy said about how good Tonali is and witnessed it firsthand myself, and you just know how much of a class above he is in that midfield. However, you can argue as well that the problem that we've had in the last 3 games has been a bit of an imbalance in the midfield itself. And it's hard to pin that on individuals. I think it's more the selection of those 3. Tonali's willingness and ability to get around the pitch and do everything that he does sort of then leads to problems where I think Bruno doesn't quite know where he should go or when he should go and all that. So there's a bit of fluidity issues there. And I think this is an opportunity for Sean Longstaff to come in. And I also think it's an opportunity for that midfield to rebalance and readdress itself and get itself back to the form it had last season. And I think going forward, especially if this is an injury that is going to trouble Tonali for a bit longer than just the 2 games, then it's the perfect opportunity for Eddie to experiment and be a case of start Bruno and change Bruno for Tonali so that we still have fresh legs and we still have that same ability in that position. But I think it is that chance, like I said, for Longstaff to come in and just for that midfield to readdress itself. We've seen the stats. Jamie Redknapp was all over it the other week in the Brighton game that when Sean Longstaff doesn't play, certain things happen, and you can see that I think it was the expected goals against is nearly doubled when he's not in that team, and you know it's clear that Sean has an ability. And don't get me wrong, I've seen Sean on multiple occasions in pre-season and seasons, last season, and even in some of the games this season, he comes on and it almost feels as if he needs a little bit longer when he's on the ball to make a decision. He'll receive the ball, then make a decision, then pass it. Whereas somebody like a Tonali has already looked at the picture, he already knows what he's going to do before he's even received the ball, and he acts much quicker. However, like I've said, there is something about Longstaff in that team that makes it tick better, and I think it's just because the way he sees the game just means that midfield's more balanced.
Yeah, the word engine gets spattered around a lot when it comes to the likes of Sean Longstaff, and he does have an engine on him. Obviously, we've spoken about Tonali and Bruno and Joe Linton as that midfield 3. Bruno at the weekend obviously had probably one of the games of his life for Brazil, Andy. Are we hoping that form kind of rubs off and it kind of sticks with him a little bit, because he has been a little bit off the ball. I think you'd probably be the first to admit that as well. Easily probably from towards the end of last season, but certainly this season hasn't been the Bruno that we know and love, shall we say. But that Brazil game, I mean, I think he made 49 passes and it was 49 completed passes as well. He didn't miss a single pass, misplaced a single pass. Got an assist. I think he got another assist last night. He set up Richarlison, who I'm surprised he even know where the back of the net was from what he played from Spurs. But yeah, are we expecting maybe it's a response from Bruno after that, those good couple of performances? Do you think that maybe just give him the kick up the arse he's needed to just kind of think, oh, okay, this is how I play.
Yeah.
And crack on with Newcastle?
Well, Richarlison's an interesting example because he goes against your argument because he's always great for Brazil and then goes back to Spurs and he's terrible. Yeah. So I don't know. But I take your point completely. Yeah. If there is an element of Bruno lacking a bit of confidence or sharpness, a game like that where, I mean, we know that he loves Brazil and he'll probably be one of these people, like most Brazilians, they choose the country over the club every single time. Going to Brazil and putting in a performance like that can only be a good thing. I think the difference is that he's playing slightly more advanced in that Brazil team and he's surrounded by other ridiculous players who can do great things. So there's potentially less pressure on him. But yeah, I think when we have a player who is the shining star in a Brazil team, we have to just rewind the clock sometimes and remember how lucky we are to have Bruno, even though he's not immune to criticism. He has been poorer than he has been. But he's still an unbelievable player, and we just got to hope that Howe just unlocks that out of him this year, because I think you're right. There's been a few times where I think teams have doubled up on him and they've really gone for Bruno and they haven't let him dictate the play as much. And I'm not sure Joe and Tonali are really doing what they need to all the time. But yeah, we need him back to his best. We all love Bruno, and we just need to see that smiling face of his again when he bangs one in the top corner. There's my early prediction.
Obviously, another player who was always good for his country and then didn't really show up for club was one Ryan Fraser, but we'll not delve any more into that one.
How random is that?
Isn't it?
He didn't even play for Scotland.
Well, when he did play, he did very well.
He was, to be fair.
Obviously, there's been an international break, Daryl, and we're maybe expecting some rotation anyway because of some of the results we've had. Talking about lineups, obviously, I think it's a given that Nick Pope keeps his place. Obviously, as you well know, Martin Dubravka has made the squad, but he's going to be on the bench, as we all think. That's an inside joke, by the way, if anyone doesn't know. But thinking of that back four, obviously Kieran Trippier has only played last night at time of recording on Tuesday. But you've got Tino Livramento, who I've remembered his name this time, who can obviously step in. Central, you've had Fabian Schär away on international duty as well. I don't know if he played or not, but he's still been away from the side. Obviously, we know Sven Botman's out, but Dan Burns been there as well. And then you've got the left wing, the left back, where Lewis Hall has been training with the England side, and maybe it's an opportunity to introduce him in, or do you stick with Target? How would you approach that back 4 or 5 as you see it?
Well, personally, I'm gambling on Sven Botman being fit again, so that Dan Burn goes back to left back. So that would be the way I look at it. Do you know what it is? As much as Kieran Trippier only played last night, and I thought he played quite well. I was watching the second half, and I thought he got himself into some really good positions, bearing in mind where he was playing, because he wasn't playing at right back. But he got into
central
fantastic
midfielder
positions
as well, as what Sky thought.
No, weird. But yeah, they had him in at left back, and he was getting in some really good attacking positions down that side. I don't think that's a problem for Kieran. I think Kieran's fitness and stamina is going to see him absolutely fine for starting on Saturday. In terms of the midfield, and I'll include Miggy in this as well, because they've all shared, Bruno, Miggy and Joelinton have all shared a flight back to Newcastle today, as we've seen on the socials from South America. Yeah, exactly. I think. Do you know what it is? It's funny, because I think Eddie will expect them back at the training ground tomorrow in some capacity. Not necessarily to train, but you'll certainly be wanting to see their faces to see how they've been doing while they're away, ready to go in on training on Friday morning. So I don't think there's going to be any issues there, unless, as we said earlier, that Joelinton didn't really look fully fit against Brighton, and it was probably an issue that he started that game. In terms of the forward line,
did he play for Brazil? Sorry, did he play for Brazil? I think he got. He got some minutes, didn't he?
I think he came on and got some minutes.
Yeah.
So he should be all right. And I think, I've just mentioned Miggy there. I think Miggy will probably be all right to start as well. The problem, the thing I'm thinking about in terms of another change in the squad would be up front, and I'm saying this bearing in mind of where we have to go on Tuesday tea time, at UK time, that is. And I'm just wondering if he might try and use this as an opportunity to start Wilson, or if he starts Isak, he won't be seeing more than an hour, because he'll want Isak fit for Tuesday night against Milan. I honestly thought that he would have started Wilson against Brighton. So it came as a shock to me on the day to see that Isak was going to start. I thought it was more, and it turned out in the end that it was more suited to Callum Wilson, because he managed to get on the score sheet against Brighton.
Yep.
And I just think, if he goes with Isak, he won't see a full hour. And if he goes with Wilson, then he might just give Wilson the full 90 and save Isak for Milan on Tuesday.
Yeah, there's obviously that, I don't want to say cloud lingering over us, but there's that shining light to look forward to on Tuesday, Andy, of the AC Milan game. And obviously we will be doing a prediction for that after the Brentford game. But in terms of rotation, obviously we've had the international break. You've got this game coming up on Tuesday. We haven't seen what Eddie Howe does in these situations before, so it's going to be a surprise for everyone, I think, when we see the lineup on Saturday. But are you expecting any or major changes to the side at the weekend?
Well, this is all new to us as fans, isn't it, as well? We don't really know what we do in this situation. Do you rotate before? Do you rotate them afterwards? It's a weird one. I mean, obviously, we've bought squad players for this exact reason, so coming off the back of an international break, maybe less need for it, but clearly that Milan game is the one that they're going to be, that's the A game, that's the top priority. So you'd think if you are going to rest players, you do it now on a Saturday kick-off, so then you've got a fully fit squad going there. But I don't honestly know. It's going to be interesting to see what he does. I don't think it'll be wholesale changes. It's not going to be like a Carabao Cup situation where you've got the entire team change the keeper, things like that. But I agree, yeah, Wilson maybe this is where Barnes gets a start on the wing instead of Gordon. We obviously know that Tonali's not going to play. I do think it's time to see one of Hall or Livramento as well, because they're there. If they're not going to put them in for a home game against Brentford, what's the point of having them in the squad? So even if they're not starting, I think Howe's game plan, and again, because obviously I'm such a good manager and I know how all these managers think, I would have thought that what he'll want to do is start as strong as possible and get a lead, and then he can take the risk of bringing some players off. Although I guess in the Liverpool game we thought we had that game won and we changed the team, and then let's not talk about the rest. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Obviously, my priority as a fan is I want us going to the San Siro with our number one, our top 11. I don't want us to be picking up any injuries. I don't want anyone to be tired. I want all of those 11 lads to be able to play 90 minutes. Although obviously that's not possible in an intense game like that. But yeah, we should wait and see. But how exciting that we've got that on the horizon. Let's do the prediction now. We're smashing Milan. Easy. Smash Brentford. Smash Milan. Move on to the next video. Come on.
There we go. My only concern with obviously the game at the weekend and I'm not saying this will happen, but there's always that thought in the back of a fan's mind when you see a player on the pitch and they've got such a big game coming up, that maybe they don't give 100% going into a tackle, or maybe they don't, maybe they'll pull out of a tackle, or they'll be a bit more hesitant as to go try and win a ball.
Well,
I don't think that'll happen, but I've got that. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think it'll happen, but there's always
Wilson was like tiptoeing around every single game, wasn't he? Before that World Cup. Bless him.
Wilson was made of glass back then, so you can explain that. Yeah. I personally think it will be Wilson who starts, and I think it will be because Howe wants Isak for the Champions League, and I think Isak will be the Champions League striker, if you will. But that's not saying that Wilson isn't capable. I think Wilson will be fully capable, but I think Wilson's a better player to have come off the bench when you're playing against the likes of an AC Milan, where it could be that the game's away from us anyway, or it could be that we're flying. You bring on a Callum Wilson who's going to bully defenders when they've been trying to chase Isak for the last 60 minutes. It's the last thing they're going to want. So yeah, I think we'll flip for this and then flip back for Milan. But again, there will be a Milan preview before the Milan game. We'll come to our predictions. Sorry?
I've just done it. That's the Milan preview.
There you are. No Milan preview this week because Andy's just done it. I'm just going to cut that out and we'll just play it on loop for 20 minutes.
Do it as a TikTok.
No, I jest. No, we'll come to our predictions, and as always, as a benefit of being a GallowgateShots member, you have the opportunity to give us your prediction to feature on these. And this week we have Shane from I'm going to assume, he hasn't said, but I'm going to assume he's from Australia, and I don't know what to give us this idea, but just watch this and we'll see what's going on.
All right, g'day lads. I reckon for the Brentford match, I reckon Newcastle will win 2-0. And I think Wilson will start and Isak will come on later on. And the goal scorers will be, I think, Wilson, and I think Isak will get one as well. I think with the international form, hopefully he comes back with him and he scores another one. And, it's always good when Wilson gets a goal. So, yeah, hopefully we get an early one to start off with and a clean sheet. Thanks, guys.
So there you have it, a 2-0
Can I just say, Scott, that our members are basically Mark Lawrenson when he used to predict Liverpool. We've got to win every single week. We've won. I love the positivity. Don't get me wrong, Shane. You're right. We should win, but we've got a 100% record walking the league this year, according to our members.
Yeah, and why not? Why not?
I love it.
But yes, 2-0. Isak and Wilson on the score sheet, but Wilson to start. And it's almost like he's watched this before we've recorded it, because it's exactly what we've said. Or maybe we're just talking a bit of sense. Who knows? But we'll come to you first, Daryl, for your prediction. Yeah, no, Andy, you see you shaking your head. That's not the case, is it? But Daryl, we'll come to you for your predictions first. What are you going for this week, mate?
Well, I don't think it'll be as emphatic as last season's showing for a start, so I'm not going to go down that route. But I think I have a feeling that Brentford will be capable of getting a goal. As we talked about earlier, that Wissa and Burmo are going to be a bit of a threat from the wings, and even if we went down the route of the game last season and conceded a penalty, we've mentioned it there that the technique that is used by Burmo in penalties is very similar to Tony. So I think it'll be 2-1. I think it'll be a tight win. I just think because we're still coming off the back of a bit of a shaky form coming into the international break, it's going to be tough for the lads to overcome that mental hurdle, especially against a team like Brentford who will give us a game. They will give us a tough game. And I think the backing of the crowd at home will be the thing that pushes us over the line on Saturday. And I think it'll be 2-1. Close game.
2-1. Andy, what are you going for, mate?
Agreed with Shane. I think Wilson will get us a goal. I think we're due to grind out a game. The one disagreement I have with Shane is that we seem incapable of keeping a clean sheet. So I don't think we're going to do that this time around. I think it will be a proper grind out result where we're all sort of raging at the end, even though we've won, just because it was such a good grind out win, if you know what I mean. I think it's going to be one of them. So I think 1-0, then we'll concede stupidly just before half time, and then we'll come out firing second half and grind it out. But yeah, Wilson on the score sheet. And let's go for a random one for the second one. Lewis Hall. Why not? Boyhood Club returns. Knee slide at the Gallowgate. There we go.
Get your money on it.
Yeah, get your money on that. Although, as we've just said earlier, don't gamble in sport. It's
yes,
that's wrong. Well, when the fun stops, stop. That's the thing. Yeah, yeah. I think I'm expecting a reaction from the players. I think I know we said that against Brighton, but it's hard to get a reaction from when you're the away team. So I think the crowd being there, everyone getting behind them. Hopefully, I do think though it's going to be one of those games where if we concede early, that could be it. Like that could be curtains because the crowd will turn, and that. I just think that negativity might ooze throughout the stadium, as we've seen in the past happen. Obviously, not in recent times, but we have seen that happen, and starting to get little indications of that on like socials and stuff. And we all know socials aren't the be all and end all of Newcastle United, but it's starting to rear its ugly head again. So I think as long as we don't concede early or first, we should be all right. I do think we'll concede. I mean, is it what 22 games now? We've only kept 2 clean sheets, I think was the stat. Mm-hmm. We are getting a little bit leaky considering we had one of the best defenses last year. But I'm going to go for a 2-1 victory as well. But I don't think it'll be as hard strung out. I think we'll fly 2-0, out the doors, and then it'll just be a second half of us trying to just keep a hold of that lead, and then Brentford will, inevitably score probably in the 70th minute or something and make the last 20 minutes a bit nervy. But I think we'll still have it under control. So it won't be as bad as what Andy said, but it won't be as good as maybe what Shane said on his prediction. Goal scorers, I think it'll be a Wilson brace, and I'll go for that.
Nice and easy.
And for my FPL, Mbeumo is going to get the goal.
I'll have that, Scott. I'll take that as well. No problem.
We'll all take that.
Yeah, we'll all take that. What do you think the score is going to be at the weekend? What is your prediction? What do you think the lineup's going to be? Who do you think is going to start? Who do you think is going to miss out? Let us know in the comments below. We do read every single one. We try and answer whenever we can. But yeah, let us know. And if you're a Brentford fan, have we missed anybody out from your side? Who should we be worried about if we haven't covered them already? And what are your predictions for this? Let us know again in the comments. If you like this sort of content, be that person who scrolls down from this video and hits the thumbs up button. It helps us reach other Newcastle fans as well as Brentford fans to get this video into their hands and into their YouTube feed. And if you want to get more from us, you can hit the subscribe button. It's absolutely free to do so. And if you want to be notified when new videos go live, you can hit the little notification bell and you will get a pop-up on whatever you watch your YouTube on to let you know there's a new video available. And we've got a whole host of things coming up this week. Daniel has, who does the FPL show, now has the Champions League FPL, which he does normally, but he's doing it for us this season. They have gone through every single group and they're doing previews of players, teams, and what to look out for the Fantasy Champions League, which I try to pick a team, and I just think half the players that I picked don't start for the team. So I have to go back and watch all of the videos that Daniel has done, and then go back and pick my team. We're releasing 2 a day, so 2 went out today for groups E and F, and tomorrow it'll be G and H. That's Thursday at this time recording, and then we'll hopefully have A, B up by the weekend, and then we'll do C and D early next week, ready for the Tuesday games that are kicking off. Other stuff we've got coming up, obviously we'll have a reaction to this game either on the Saturday or the Sunday. There'll also be a preview for that all-important Champions League game against AC Milan. Looking forward to recording that one. That should be a good one. And obviously you've also got the regulars like Canny Chatter is back on the audio this week. We are recording that tomorrow, and also the Always Smiling Faces podcast. What more can you ask for? I mean, there's so much content. We're practically giving it away. But if you want to throw some money our way, you can do. We do have a membership program. It's $2.99 a month, and that gets you early access to videos like this. It gets you the opportunity to record your prediction. Thanks to Shane for providing us with his prediction this week. We'll see. I think we'll get a lot of responses for the Milan prediction. So there may do a couple for the Milan if we can get a couple of people picked. We'll maybe do that and get them in as well. Get them on the channel. But it also gets you access to the Telegram group, which is where we pick who gets access to doing these reactions. So if you are a member but you're not in the Telegram group, you'll need to join the Telegram group to be able to get access to the member prediction opportunity. Boys, hoping for a reaction this weekend. I think we're all quietly confident that that's going to happen. I think we've hit a little blip, and I don't think it's anything to worry about. But we'll go into this one. Ooh, who knows? We'll see what happens, but let's hope for a win. Thanks, Daryl. Thanks, Andy.
Cheers.
Thank you for watching.
Cheers.
We will see you all in the next one. Come on, let's get a win.
Come on, boys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.